From Raleigh, North Carolina, it's Westworld with Jay, Jack, and Mike, a podcast dedicated to HBO's Westworld. This week we'll analyze, discuss, and recap episode 2.4, Riddle of the Sphinx. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Westworld with Jay, Jack, and Mike. My name is Jay.
My name is Mike.
And I'm Bernard. My butt is raw.
And welcome to the show. Yes, you know, it's funny, Jack, that you focus on that as well. When that scene where Clementine is dragging Bernard, I was like, there's no way she dragged him that far and his pants aren't completely disintegrated. But then when he stood up, there was some tearing there. But still, I feel like those pants
they would be... But let's be fair. It was the old West, and they made clothes tougher, right?
But that was a cloth. I don't know.
I mean, now clothes come with holes in them, so
that's true.
But yeah, it was yeah.
I mean, he did get up awful fast. I think I'd still be laying there. That's just me.
Well, he's
would you just wait? You'd wait for another pair of pants to come flying your way?
No, I just think my butt would hurt from being, dragged across the. How far?
Well,
I don't know how far.
He's on cognitive lockdown. All right, he's got more things.
I mean, there was a lot more of him that was hurting, especially considering not even the cognitive stuff going on, but the fact that Clementine had knocked him out to take him away. So there's a lot of him that was hurting. He was dealing with a lot this episode. He was hurting a lot, and apparently he hurt a lot of people as well in the past. But I love that on this really monolith game-changing episode of Westworld. This is, of course, the first thing we focus on this podcast is the degradation of clothing in Westworld.
Well, to be fair, it was the opening scene. Am I right?
Hashtag Fartgate. Hashtag 2018.
Not really the opening scene. But I'll see your point there.
Yes. No. This was a big reveal in terms, because we've been kind of talking for a while. What's this big kind of secret side thing that's been going on, and it's been hinted at since season 1, and really kind of pulling the layers back in season 2 so far. We're 4 episodes in, and with the Riddle of the Sphinx, we kind of, I assume, get that answer. There might still be other things, but they're also trying to create the Lazarus Pit, rebirthing Jim Delos well after he was dead. Can you bring somebody back to life? And it's so interesting, this, or at least in my own mind, I wasn't thinking about it all the time, because it makes sense. If you can make perfect creations of people where you can't tell, it's like, okay, why can't you just put somebody's mind in one of these bodies? And we kind of found it out today.
I thought we talked about that last season.
Maybe we talked about Ford. Maybe Ford would put himself in another body and things like that.
But I think we talked about that could be possible because of the way that the hosts are so human-like.
But here we see
there are issues.
We see the limitations of such endeavors. With even on take 149. Still can't handle reality. But
you think, I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but you think it's because he was so strong-willed and had such an ego?
Well, let's save that for the actual recap discussion. But all in all, Mike, you seemed really pumped about this episode.
I tweeted something to the effect of, and not to harp on season 2 too much, but to your point, Jay, I think that I was sort of waiting for a moment for me in season 2 where it sort of reached the peaks of storytelling and twists and mysteries and philosophy that we love so much and salivated over with season 1. And I really feel like, we were throwing that stool against the windows in futility for a few episodes. And I feel like the glass finally metaphorically broke in this episode. I mean, I think a lot of people have been saying this is probably one of the best episodes of the series, which granted is only 14 episodes right now, but is still saying something. I think that, I think that the cast and the ensemble is incredible, but I think the show can benefit sometimes from sort of winnowing its focus down to only a select few characters. Yes. It took me a little while to even realize, oh, Dolores and Maeve are not in this. Yeah. And it's crazy considering that sort of those contingencies contain 3 out of our 4 main characters, but there was so much strong stuff going on here that really helped fill in the mythos and the philosophy of Westworld. You know, I think going into season 2, a lot of us were asking sort of, where do you go from here? Because now we're in uncharted territory, essentially. We're in Ghost Nation because this is the point we're reaching where the movie essentially started. Are we going to wipe out all the humans like the movie? Are we going to do something else completely? Turns out to be the latter. So I'm so excited for this. I love the way it carried out, just focusing on these couple storylines, the young William, the old William, and then everything sort of around them. And it opened up a whole Pandora's box of possibilities and mysteries that now I think we can really orient season 2 around in terms of how does everything contextualize into this larger mystery at hand.
Yeah, and do we say this is a William-centric episode? I mean, save for a bit of the Bernard and Elsie stuff, which really is in kind of service to the Jim Delos opening, but it had a lot of character development for good old Man in Black, it seemed. Among the just big reveals of the episode, and then the very existential question of life and death and rebirth. But yeah, it's so much stuff to unpack. Excited to chat about it with you all, and we actually have a lot of listener feedback as well. And Jack, I'm sure you have a doozy of a crackpot theory of the week to go on par with your torn trousers opening.
Still trying to think of one, but that's okay. I just finished the episode. I didn't have a chance to watch it twice.
As always, Jack bringing his A game to the show.
Whoa. Last week I said I called it, right? So
anyway, let's
let's just brush over that.
Wait, what did you get right last week? What did you get right?
I said that Grace was going to be William or Logan's daughter.
Did you say that?
I did say that.
You did. He did say that.
No.
And to be fair, in the crackpot theory world, you only have to be right for one.
She's going to coast the rest of the season.
For the whole. No, actually, the whole series.
I mean, if you think about it, like think of Jack's crackpot theories as like a gun with 10 chambers. The bullet only needs to hit its target once for it to actually kill something. You know.
Exactly. So I hit the target. Now I can just go. Oh, your crackpot series sucked. Oh, you remember when I said that William's daughter was Grace? Oh, that's right.
Going for the fish in the barrel on that one. How about my Ghost Nation?
I'm like the Al Bundy.
Calling that Grace wasn't dead. That Ghost Nation was not going to kill the host. Was I kind of right with that one? I was kind of.
Well,
maybe like a 0.25% right.
Well, why would they have killed? Why they would drag Grace and then have her be captured by Ghost Nation just to be killed by her?
I don't.
Should we keep calling her Grace, or do we officially call her Emily now?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to, or maybe she changed her name because she hates her father so much.
That could be.
That was what her father called her, but.
And jury's still out as to whether, even though William was surprised to see Emily, we still don't know if she's a board member yet. So that my theory is still like, treading water right now.
I think she could. She might be because what's his name recognized her, right?
No, because he was like, "You sure you've been to the park enough that you know you understood the language or whatever?" So
I'm gonna give you your due there, Mike. I think.
Oh, thank you, Jack, as the official anointer. Though I think
I'm not.
You're less the god. You're less the god and more the devil in this case. This episode is all about the devil, so I think it's appropriate.
I'm not gonna be like Jade. What about my theory that it's like a Western theme?
That's not what it was. All right.
That there's a Western theme to this show. Do I get credit for that? I know it's called Westworld, but I was really going on the limb on that one.
Let's go to the recap here. So we have Rolling Stones playing on a sweet record player. It was pretty cool. So glad to know that vinyl is still there in the future.
Well, vinyl, just like it wasn't in HBO's future. How'd you guys feel when you opened on a record getting played as the camera revolved around a small enclosing, chamber where a guy was going through these menial activities? Remind you of anything?
So I put it in there in the notes. Smacks of last season 2 opener. Make your own kind of music.
Yeah. Now I see it. Yeah.
Where we're introduced to Desmond.
That was my first thought. I go, wow.
And it's hard not to. And there's a couple other. I mean, just with this being the Delos, Tech Bay 12 or whatever. There's a lot of people talking around on Reddit and our own boards and everything. Are we just going to have like different hatches now? We're going to keep discovering different hatches that have different purposes.
All right, I'm calling it now. If there's an underwater hatch.
Okay, you can't just rehatch. Actually, no, Jack, just save that. That'll be your crackpot theory.
Okay.
It's underneath all those floating bodies. That's where
and Daddy Teddy drowned.
Exactly. It's
exactly. He couldn't hold his breath as long as Charlie could.
Well, I'm not gonna. No spoiler alert. Well, actually, I mean, it's been long enough. Sorry.
It's been a while. It's been
actually,
I think
he has it's Delos on his hand or something like that. He had something.
I think actually Through the Looking Glass had its 10-year anniversary. Earlier on this year? I think
so. I think you're right.
It's been 10 years.
Maybe it's been 10 years since season 4. I'm not sure, but around that time.
No, it has. Season 4, it has been 10 years. Because it's been 8 years since season 6. So yeah,
you guys are getting older. Crazy.
Jack is staying the same. I mean, I think this just adds to the theory that Jack has his consciousness put into a host body, which is why he's having his own little tics and stutterings and forgetting things. I think that's the excuse, right?
That I can live with. But if I was going to put my mind in a host body, I would have picked a better body.
Maybe it was something that was left over.
It was on the this isn't working. Use section, a big pile of.
Oh man. So Jim Delos is in some sort of apartment under surveillance and goes through a lonely routine. Include I'm not gonna get into it, but and a woman comes on in the mirror and says he has a guest. It's William, who is there to ask some questions. When Jim gets frustrated for why he's doing this, and William says it's for fidelity, William hands him some paper. So in the later sequences, we find out what this is. It's actually testing Jim Delos' consciousness in a kind of a hybrid host body. When I after watching it the first time, I was like, okay, was that first time the real time? Was that the real Jim? But on second viewing, it seems pretty clear that this is one of the fake Jims.
Right?
Do we all feel that way?
Yes.
Yeah, because I think if it wasn't, he wouldn't have handed him that paper. We find out later that the paper is essentially a script of every interaction that they had before to essentially tell Delos, hey, you sort of were testing you being on a loop. I mean, I sort of caught onto it in the beginning when William was asking some very familiar questions to Delos, which sounded very similar to the questions that the staff would ask the host. Do you know where you are? Do you know who I am? Just these things to sort of establish, as he says, fidelity and a sense of location, and then sort of figure out diagnostics from there. So, I mean, I don't know where this gets placed on the whole timeline. I'm assuming this is after he gets signed on to it. After, obviously William convinces Delos to sign on. It might be after all the, I guess that's after all the Dolores stuff as well. Probably after William confronts Dolores in episode 2. Yeah. But yeah, this is I know we declared it was a series wrap on Papa Delos. Thankfully not, because Peter Muller puts in an incredible performance this episode. We talked about this with Abernathy as well, how tough it must be as an actor to try to play a glitching robot. And it's interesting to sort of read the different takes that they do. I know that I read this on an interview with EW that, they noticed that Abernathy almost does it more like he has dementia, like he's just sort of forgetting what's supposed to happen, whereas Muller is almost playing it like he has a speech impediment, like he's stuttering and he's twitching a little bit. So it's interesting to sort of see the differences there. But
he's fighting his conscience and he's fighting the what they've placed inside him. That's what I thought about.
Well,
He's fighting with it. Yeah,
it works with the two different things that Abernathy and Delos are experiencing, in that Abernathy's mind has been hacked essentially, so it's all over the place, and then you have Jim Delos, where his consciousness is rejecting the host body or rejecting the reality that he sees, and I think that's really the crux of it is, or even we'll probably get into it the last time.
Is Abernathy the same as Jim Delos?
No,
you don't think so?
Absolutely not.
That's why he's so important?
No. Abernathy, they just used him as a hard drive to put the encryption key into.
Okay.
And when they were. And I feel like, I don't know, it's almost like the opposite trajectories, whereas Abernathy was sort of glitching out because he was a host who was starting to sort of see more, self-actualizing conditions. I think Delos was something that started off as more of a like self-actualizing thing and then started to become more host-like, and as a result was kind of glitching out with that as well. So it's sort of interesting to compare the two. Again, we don't know sort of where this falls. This seems to be a completely separate project. Who knows if, Ford or Arnold knew about this? I guess they would have, right? Or do we think because we've debated this as to whether like Williams' section of the park was something that the founders really knew about or not? Mm-hmm. Do we think that they knew about this thing as well? Because this is a pretty big thing.
Right, and it seems like, so is this the thing that they're waiting to save on? Is that like Delos has some type of rider to ensure that he is safe or his consciousness is safe? Or is there other things? Or is the whole data collection part of it the big thing? But
I think it goes to the data collection, DNA and all that stuff.
But then why later when Elsie is looking at the OS, does the Abernathy's key, kind of encryption key, kind of match perfectly with that OS? So I mean I don't know. I think there
has to be a reason why they were keeping the DNA and all that other stuff. So
probably more tests on consciousness and
I would think so. It has to tie. It has to tie in.
I don't know. All right, we then go to Bill and Lawrence, who are heading north to the town where Lawrence's family is, and they pass a railroad where people are the ties or the tracks, I guess, which was really disturbing, like really, really disturbing.
And I think
the People's Railroad.
Yeah, so truly, I think that it's from what I saw, I believe it's a take on I think. A lot of people knew that with the building of the Transcontinental Railroad, I believe there was some abuse being harbored towards the Chinese immigrants that they hired. And I believe if you look back, you notice that all the people that are essentially doing the track laying are all seem to be of Asian descent.
Yeah.
So I guess my assumption is that that's a way to sort of like turn history on its head, sort of like just a good symbol of the role reversal that is occurring with the robot revolution. I thought another interesting part of this as well, it was a short scene, but did you guys make anything of William talking about like, oh, these tracks run this direction, the game has multiple players? Did you make anything of that statement?
To me, I was like, okay, is that because the Confederados are also maybe on this path and Dolores is maybe, I mean, he doesn't really know Dolores is on it, maybe he does, but that there's these other people going towards the same thing, Glory, the Valley Beyond, whatever it is. Maybe that's what I kind of took it as.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering too, because I mean, with Ford telling him that the game is for him, I don't think it's necessarily like, oh, and all these other board members are competing as well. I think he's saying that there are other people that are involved, but it's, there are other people that are in the show, but he's still the leading role at the end of the day. Mm-hmm, right. So maybe I see your point, Jay, that maybe he was referring to, oh, these are the Confederados, or maybe there are other people that are heading towards the door and doing something else, which helps, lead to when he tries to quote unquote bargain with Craddock later by saying, "Hey, I'll get you to where you want to go because I know where you want to go."
Yep. And you don't know where you want to go, so you only think you know where you want to go, something like
that. We then go to Clementine and Bernard and Elsie. Clementine brings Bernard to a cave. Bernard goes in and finds a chained Elsie. So there she is. Why keep her alive? And again, if this was all Ford's doing, somehow programming Clementine to take Bernard back to the Delos hatch, and then leaving Elsie there, like actually chaining her up there instead of killing her. I guess Ford knew that Bernard would need Elsie's help after the chaos ensues.
I mean,
it has to be it.
I mean, it's a really interesting thing to think about because it's not like, oh, Ford's such a peaceful person that he got Bernard to kill Teresa in cold blood because she stood in his way and said she would reveal the information. I wonder if it's something where we still don't know if Ford prepared something for Bernard. Bernard makes this very looming dramatic statement later on where he says like, I'm in control now. Ford's no longer has a hold on me. I doubt that is the case. So maybe it is possible that like he kept Elsie alive because, she was the only thing that was really standing in his way of executing this plan. And now that it's executed, she doesn't really stand a threat to a dead man, is what I'll say to that.
Yeah. Yes, I think it's, to me, like you mentioning Bernard saying, I'm in control now, it was smacked very similar to Survivor when they're saying, like, oh, and this person's going home, and this game is mine now. I'm in the driver's seat, and then they actually get voted out that night.
The kiss of death.
Yeah, the kiss of death. So Bernie frees her. She rightfully runs and grabs a gun, points it at Bernie. Bernie pleads for her help. She's brought into the truth that he is a host, not a person.
Right.
She is going to help him because she wants to know answers. Bernie goes down and flashes to a memory in the Delos Bay 12. He wakes. She tells him he sustained a lot of cortical damage and needs cortical fluid. Says he should make it till the cavalry comes in. Bernie says they aren't going to come until the secret thing is assured safe. Bernie flashes to a memory of coming to the cave. He finds a secret lever because of that flash, and they go down into the hatch, or Lab 12. It's different from Charlotte's lab. Elsie notices a control unit printer, and Bernard flashes to him seeing something being printed. Techs and drones have been killed. Another drone comes to Elsie, and she kills it. Before she injects the cortical fluid, she asks if he was a part of this. He doesn't think so. Bernard doesn't think so. She asks if Ford was, and he reveals that he is dead, and she says, F me. So, thoughts here with our introduction to this hatch.
I thought Elsie would have been better off just shooting Bernard and going on.
Yeah, like Elsie seemed really weirdly trusting here.
Because even then she goes, just don't lie to me. Make sure you don't lie. I mean, I don't trust Bernard at this point, and Elsie is just a pawn right now. It's just a matter of time. It's a matter of time before she gets killed.
But the fact of the matter is, she is now, I feel like, on the hunt for more information. You know, now that she had her suspicions confirmed that something was going on with the Stray and everything,
yeah,
I think she feels like she wants to know more, and he is literally the only lead at this point. So I think it would, I mean, if she was able to reprogram him to have him follow her commands, that would probably be the ideal situation. Right. But he's also coming to her from like a supplicant position, you know, and saying, hey, you need to repair me. There's a lot of interesting stuff in here. First, when Bernard wakes up to her, you know, still holding him at gunpoint, he says, is this now? Which I don't know if you guys remember, in the very first episode of season 2, when we see Bernard go through a bunch of flashes, some of which still haven't happened yet, the words that sort of bring him back to the beach are, is this now? So I think the shifting timelines of Bernard are probably, I guess it's going to be one of our main storytelling devices if this episode is any indication. So we're going to have to, I guess, keep track of when is now and sort of piecing these together, because it gets, I mean, Jack, I know you talked before we recorded about this sort of being an LSD trip. It does get a little trippy with Bernard, like, watching himself walk by and, you know, find the rock to unlock things. I like how they're playing with time in that regard. I know we did it a little bit with Dolores as well, but it was more so that Dolores was sort of jumping in her body at different times. Bernard is almost having, like, out-of-body experiences, which I think is an apt phrase considering what we find out about this ultimate plan. I think the phrase out of body is going to apply very much to the rest of this season.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So when we're trying to piece together the time, because it is all over the place, this Bernard coming to get this printed control unit that Ford sent him there to do, we assume this is before Ford is killed. Is it after Teresa was killed, or is it like right before? Is it right before everything went to crap? Because it seems he's very much under control of Ford in these flashbacks, because he's very drone-like. He's not really. He doesn't seem in control. Or is this an Arnold flashback to the first time he was there and got ticked off?
Yeah, and I mean how like secluded is this area away from everything as well? Because I mean, how long ago did he kill those people and have those drones kill themselves? Was it fresh, or was it done even before Ford died? I think that there's some interesting things to you know, take into context here. There's also the context where, I don't know if you guys noticed this, where Elsie said, when we sort of found out, like, what's the source of this cortical damage, she said, oh, it looks like you shot yourself, which he did. Right. So I wonder if Ford, either purposely or accidentally, didn't do that good of a patch-up job on after he made Bernard shoot himself and rebuild him, because maybe that sort of was him feeling the after effects of that moment that happened, all the way back at the end of season 1.
Yeah, exactly. But my other thought was, at least my big theory from this episode, is if he printed a second control unit, is he actually an Arnold? And the reason his brain is all messed up is because he's either lapsing like Jim Delos did, or his brain kind of got messed up from shooting himself in the head that killed him before. Did Ford actually bring Arnold back, and was that Ford's big play? I'm thinking back to, and maybe I'm focusing too much on the glasses, but I know one thing that a friend of the podcast, Joe Garfine, brought up on her podcast with this idea that when Bernie woke up on the beach, he didn't have his glasses on, which he's very rarely without, and that was sort of one of the the motions that Ford sort of put into him to say, oh yeah, Arnold always brushes his glasses like this. When Elsie detasks him and puts him to sleep, she takes his glasses. What if there's some sort of like juncture point where from then on out it's almost a different type? Maybe it was Elsie going in there and changing something. Maybe he changed himself, but like this is a different person or different host body or different brain from what we saw previously. Because there's so much stuff going on with memory here. It could be credible that Bernard has either multiple, consciousness in his heads that are sort of fighting each other and finding their own narrative structure, or things are getting switched out at will. Yeah, I think it's juicy, and that's what's fun about it.
It's like a steak, man.
But there is that at the end of the episode that Bernard was there to print another human, not a host. And it's, okay, what is the other human? Is it going to be Ford? I mean, I feel like you're going to get all the cliche responses. Oh, it's Arnold, or it's Ford, or was it Elsie? Like, if there's another human printed, who was it? Why were they? And how is it going to play out? And if it's part of Ford's big game, it's really curious to find out who it is and where they are.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about that later, but I wonder if there's something too. I mean, do we assume that if we're putting, I think we found out that they're called chestnuts, like the little red, they look like gumballs that represent, the consciousness there. I mean, they can put him in a host body, but does the host body have to look like the person? Like Papa Delos.
I don't
know.
Well,
I don't know if it means
I would say no.
No.
Yeah, so I mean, because I think one of the major things against the theory that it could be Ford is, okay, we're pretty sure, Anthony Hopkins isn't coming back, save for the random voiceover when we see only his legs like Nanny and Muppet Babies.
I was thinking maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they have to, because Delos always looked in the mirror.
Yeah.
And put his, I mean, if you looked in the mirror and you looked different, wouldn't that... I would think that would screw us up, because they always made a point of him going and putting his button on and looking in the buttoning his top button and looking in the mirror. So if you're looking in the mirror and you see someone that doesn't look like you,
I feel like you accelerate the degradation that happens to Jim Delos, right? If you don't see yourself, then your reality would probably just go kaput.
That's why I was placed in this body.
Yeah, because I would say that because that was the only I can't wait to see Jack's flashback to see the Flash Jack. But that was the other thing that I had, like, oh, maybe it can still be Ford, but it can be like his brain in someone else's body. But I think you make a great point, Jack, that almost immediately leads to, the split between the mind and the body of them saying, right, wait, this is not mine. So you think they would want to, put their brain into something that at least looks relatively like them, so that the connection happens and the assimilation occurs a lot easier in order to produce a fully functioning host.
Exactly.
Interesting. We then go to Grace or I guess Emily and Stubbs. The Ghost Nation brings Emily to their camp. Stubbs is there. Yay! They aren't killing guests. Just
why do you hate Stubbs?
I don't. It's just we
I think he's yang for like good. Like this was with Elsie as well. Oh, good, a mystery that's been happening since like the end of season 1.
Yeah.
It was sort of like we saw Stubbs in episode 1, so we knew what was going to happen. But like, how did he get away from Ghost Nation? Turns out Ghost Nation just got away from him almost.
Stubbs says it's best to wait out, and Emily says she doesn't want to get out. Sound like anybody? And then we then go to Bill and Lawrence. And so last week she was writing in a notebook, seemingly mapping out the park. This week we find out that she knows. Is it Algonquin? I think that's what the
Lakota.
She knows the language of the Ghost Nation, so she spent some time in the park, but she's still fairly young. So if she is William's daughter, like daughter, like father, like daughter, I don't know.
Yep.
That's dedication. But I wonder what she's after.
What struck me was when Stubbs said, "We gotta do. This is protocol. We have to do this. We have to do this." So they've talked about it since the first episode of season 2, but they knew that someday the host could take over and destroy everything, and this is protocol, and it just seems that at what point do you go, okay, I got to break from protocol, I got to save myself?
Well, I think you prepare for all of the events, and like if it happens, you don't expect it to happen, but you prepare for it to happen, and you prepare for it so much so that when it does happen, you don't even think, you just go to, what's the protocol, and that's generally what should keep you safe. Like when you're on a plane, you go through the security stuff. It's the same thing over and over again, and it may be boring in that time, but if crap goes down.
But sometimes protocol doesn't work.
But I think generally they've tested it out, and it generally should. Like if the plane is crashing and those oxygen masks come down, Jack, what are you supposed to do if you have a younger child sitting next to you?
Put my mask on, and that's it. That's all I have to worry.
Yep.
All I have to worry about.
Wave goodbye to them.
I don't know. I don't know this kid.
So yeah, I think that's why they're so sticking to protocol, because I think that's what you do.
If you're that worried about it, I would already have the troops on the ground waiting for something like that. I guess they did have them, and they don't
remember, because Delos isn't gonna get there until they know that this is secure.
And the Delos
and said 100 times.
Most of the security sort of got ambushed within the facility, and then the remaining, or at least a good amount of the remaining forces, ended up getting blown up at Fort Forlorn Hope. So Stubbs is people are running thin, and to Jay's point, the actual the strand of it all doesn't get there until about 2 weeks after the fact. So I think Stubbs is just going with this idea of, and maybe he's also under the illusion of okay, I can still maintain some sort of control. I know what these hosts are capable of. So he's like, okay, I will just acquiesce to their wishes, let them do what they need to do to me, and then I can hopefully escape with my life. And then when he runs into, I think that his interaction with Emily is interesting as well, because it's to your point earlier, it doesn't seem like he knows her, but I wonder, they knew of the Man in Black in season 1, right? Stubbs saw him on the map and was like, okay, he gets all the special privileges.
Yeah, exactly.
Wouldn't he know of her? Or does she not? Maybe she's not in Westworld that often. Maybe she's more in she's more of a Shogun world or a Raj world person.
Like I said, to me, it's like he knew her. That he knew her.
I think,
and maybe she was on the board when she said when he said we have to stick with protocol. It's almost like he figured she knew what protocol was.
Well, as Jim Delos' granddaughter, if she wanted to be on the board, I would think she would be on the board. Even when Jim Delos seemed to be pretty fond of his granddaughter, as most grandfathers are of their grandchildren. So to your point, Jack, I think if she wanted to be, I think she would be, unless she's that estranged from her father and doesn't want anything to do with it. But her being in the park and being this ingrained into the different parks kind of tells me that she is more involved than you might think.
Okay.
Going to Bill and Lawrence. They get to Lawrence's town, and he orders a drink very similar to season 1 when they came to the town, except there isn't anybody around. And the saloon owner there is shaking. His hand is shaking as he's pouring the tequila. And Bill's like, "Wait, I haven't even shot anybody yet. Why are you scared?" And that's when Craddock and his cronies come up and take him. Bill asks who shot them up, and Craddock says it was Wyatt. To which Bill replies, "Good for her." Thought that was a neat little nod there. Right. They get rounded up in the town with Lawrence's wife and kid in a church, and Lawrence asks him about his daughter, and it shocks Bill. Asks if his daughter would want to see him get killed in front of her. He says she might. Lawrence tells him where the weapons are hidden and tells the plan to wait till they're drunk, and then they'll get the weapons. Bill changes plans and gives up the info to Craddock and offers to take them to glory. So, thoughts here on Lawrence remembering conversations about his daughter, which I don't think happened in this timeline of Lawrence. I think those were previous timelines that maybe he is also remembering before. Or did he actually mention it during this one?
No, yeah, I don't know if it's this one or no. I think it might be when something else is going on. When he's like, "Oh, I remember us having this conversation."
Yes,
but
exactly.
It's interesting because we were so focused on some of these other hosts sort of coming into their own consciousness that I think they said in season 1 or maybe we said it earlier on the season that Lawrence is like a map. But I think he's also sort of a constant in this world that maybe he's starting to sort of realize these reveries as well, maybe become more self-realized. But I think also we start to see a lot of I didn't notice it, at least in the first season, a lot of the similarities between William and Lawrence too, where, Lawrence says, "Hey, with some fluke of nature, I got a wife and a daughter who think I hung the moon. Mm-hmm. The truth is I'm one son of a bitch." And I think that maybe that's another reason why, we see later on that the reason why I think Bill goes so renegade and kills all those Confederados is him, seeing Lawrence's wife get mistreated so poorly, and it just sort of reminds him of, what happened to Juliet. And so I think that it's cool to see that, at first Bill was maybe just using Lawrence as a way to get guided around Westworld, but I think much like, our great friend Sizemore created Mr. Hector Escaton to create another part of himself that he wanted to see. Even though Bill didn't create Lawrence, he's starting to see a lot of himself in him. Yep,
exactly. Yeah, I was going to say, if Hector is Lee's mirrored person or host version, there's definitely, at least in in Lawrence's family, a mirror there that hits William. In what's left of his heart that's 3 sizes too small.
How did you guys feel about the return of Craddock? Because I was surprised considering that Teddy let him and his friends go, his cronies, as you said, last episode, but I didn't expect to see them back so quickly.
Well, I think last week I questioned Dolores trying to kill Craddock, and the men. I said, "Why would you kill them?" But then you can see why that he's not controllable. You guys might even said that last week. That he's in it for himself, so maybe she knew that's okay. I used him for this, but now he's just going to be a problem. I need to eliminate him. So she was probably right, and Teddy was wrong for letting him go.
My question with that was if Clementine bringing Bernard to the cave was Ford's work or part of Ford's game, and Clementine also was seemingly serving Dolores. Is Dolores' whole play here a part of Ford's greater game that is seemingly directly involved with Man in Black? So letting Craddock go, or assigning Teddy to it, knowing that Teddy wouldn't kill them, is Ford knowing that Craddock needed to be in that town to kind of test William as part of Ford's greater game that Bill is kind of facing right now, because that to me kind of, it's maybe a little too on the head, but there seems to be that this whole thing with Craddock and how it relates to Bill and his journey in this game kind of fit really perfectly. So where Craddock could have easily been killed last week, or probably should have been killed, it makes sense now why they let him live.
Yeah, it almost seems like too convenient.
Yeah.
Almost, right? They're like, oh, here he is holding, this facsimile of his wife hostage. What are you going to do about it? And yeah, I've always been wondering, even though Dolores says the voice that she's listening to is her own, how much is she really influenced by Arnold or Ford? Or you could even make the argument that, the reason why Teddy let Craddock go is because that was still Ford's narrative and Ford's characterization overpowering what Dolores was trying to instill into him. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's crazy to think about if this was all planned out, if this is all functioning on, a plot line. I mean, it brings up to mind the title of this episode, which is The Riddle of the Sphinx. So this comes from, the Greek story of Oedipus, where before Oedipus did a lot of other things, he was most well known for solving the riddle of the Sphinx, which was what has 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the afternoon, and 3 legs at night. The correct answer is man. But I think, Oedipus also talks about this idea of a self-fulfilling prophecy, that he tried to change his fate, but he was sort of so reserved to this path that he almost ends up causing his own downfall as a result. And that sort of speaks towards it, right? If Ford is controlling everybody, no matter how much these people might be thinking that they're making their own maneuvers and rebelling against these gods, they're actually doing the gods' work for them by causing them to actually go down this path.
Yep. Exactly. Jack, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, like I said, it could be, I'm not going to say lazy writing because it was so well done, but I think it was done, the whole image of, his the way his wife was, because you see him running up the stairs and sing. Well, I don't know, we're ahead of ourselves here, but yeah, I think it was done intentionally.
What, Craddock being released?
Craddock being released, yeah.
Okay. All right.
But I still think that Dolores, then I go back to Dolores knowing that he couldn't, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
Okay. So we go to Jim Delos' version, day 7. Did we get a definitive answer on which version of this? We know the last one is 149.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I can't remember. I know that he, like you said, he's lasted
7 days.
He made it to day 7 this time. So essentially, they're just testing to see his endurance, how long he lasts without, cracking under the cognitive dissonance. So yeah, I'm not sure what. I mean, I guess pretty early on because they're still into the idea of lighting things on fire to start things over again. Yeah. But at least they change up the tracks a little bit, right? Maybe the technicians were probably getting annoyed by hearing the same song every morning. That they're okay, let's
4 records there, so you may have just had a different one that day. But it's a good call out. And this song is Roxy Music, "Do the Strand." Hadn't heard that one before, but Jim likes it. He's dancing. He doesn't spill the milk in the coffee this time, so that I guess is progress.
Good work, Jim.
I'm also noticing, looking up some quick lyrics for "Do the Strand," it mentions the Sphinx.
There you go. My favorite thing with Riddle of the Sphinx is there was a great episode of Extreme Ghostbusters that featured the Sphinx, and it was the Riddle of the Sphinx. Good episode. Check it out. I think Extreme Ghostbusters is on Hulu. It's like a sequel to the real Ghostbusters cartoon show. Anyway, William...
I'll get out and watch that one right now.
Who is slightly older. So I didn't notice it the first time, but the second time watching it, there is some makeup to make Jimmy Simpson look a little bit older in this one. But I thought, if you're going to make him look older or at least get closer to Bill, you need to have some receding hair, I feel, before transitioning into Bill.
Yeah, I would agree.
Just to be realistic here.
I agree.
And we're back to a similar convo. But this time we see that the paper that he gave to him the first time we had this similar scene are his exact answers. And Jim then says, "And here I thought you were just pissing away my money. I guess I didn't recover. It's been 7 years since his death." Right. And he says, "I'm not in California anymore, am I?" By the way, shout out to Carlsbad.
There you go.
And, to which Williams replies, "If you can't tell, does it matter?" Jim wants to get out, smoke cigars, sail my boat, F my wife. But he finds out his wife is dead. Julie is fine. Granddaughter is whip smart. Jim Delos starts to short out. William leaves. Tech mentions he made it to day 7. That's progress. And Jim has her terminate him by incinerating the whole thing. And if we're talking about consciousness not being able to handle, I think maybe that's the crux, is realizing that you have come back, but the things that were your reality then are kind of completely different, and you aren't able to act, or you won't be able to really come back and actually have it work. Yeah,
well, I think that the symbolism of the fishbowl and the fish in it is really interesting as well, where, this is his only companion, but I mean, he is sort of in this glassed off area for observation, and the notable thing about goldfish is they apparently have a very short-term memory. And after countless numbers of termination, it seems like Delos does as well. But there's so many interesting things in here, really interesting callbacks to, William says at one point, when Delos is asking him questions, and William replies with, "If you can't tell, does it matter?" Which was something asked all the way back in the second episode of this series when he talks with Angela when he first goes into Westworld about like asking if you're a host, and she says, "If you can't tell, does it matter?" So I love these little nuggets that William sort of carries with him. It shows that even when he's outside the park, he's consistently obsessed with this idea of Westworld, that he's still sort of carrying his own versions of chestnuts into these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of those chestnuts, it seems the real consciousness ones are red, and the ones that are in the hosts are white. So it's a way to kind of separate those two, possibly.
Yeah, obviously, I think with the incineration, there's obviously a lot of hell imagery. We're going to have every conversation that they have. You have Delos talking about, like, if you want to appease the devil, you should at least make an offering. He's going to talk later on about how he realizes that essentially there is no God, just the devil looking at his own reflection. But very, hellacious imagery with him going up in flames. But I also think it ties in nicely into, William, I think, said in episode 2 that he wants to, watch it all burn. I think it was Logan, R.I.P. Logan, by the way, who was talking about how, everyone was just sort of, everyone was burning to the ground, just sort of, fiddling as they did it. So a lot of, a lot of demonic imagery talked about in this episode. But the idea of fire is something that I feel like, surprisingly, they keep coming back to, especially around, like, the Delos family.
Yep. Agreed. We then go to Bill and Lawrence back in the town. Major Craddock is torturing the townspeople. He blows off the saloon owner's hand, which was pretty messed up.
I thought it was uncalled for, but that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised it took us this long to see the nitro again, because I feel like the nitro is sort of like an ultimate weapon in the Old West, right? And we saw Lawrence back when he was El Lazo got some, smuggled in with him courtesy of William and Dolores near the end of season 1. I was wondering what they did with it, but I guess Lawrence just sort of buried it in his hometown.
Well, in the old, I watched a lot of the old 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s Westerns, and the nitro back then, if you just shook it the wrong way, it would go off. But here it seemed like it had a little more stability in Westworld, just saying. I mean, I don't know. I've never used nitro.
They probably have to make it a little bit more safe in Westworld, maybe.
Maybe it's over time.
Yeah, otherwise, everything would just be exploding at all points in time.
Yeah, so it's like you had to pour it in really careful, and but more dramatic, I guess.
Do you think if someone I know that the humans can't get, or at least they couldn't have in the past gotten, killed. They could still get shot, but not killed. Do you think they could still get blown up?
I would think so.
If they lose a hand, is that a thing, or is it just like harmless explosions to the humans?
I would think it would be harmless. I mean, it would have to be some protection there, right? I don't know. That's a good point. I never thought about it.
Yeah, to me, I don't know how you protect against that. So I'm going to say,
if I'm coming there, I would say, okay, I can't get shot. What about being blown up? That'd probably be the second thing I'd ask for. Yeah. But who knows?
True. Let's go to Grace and Stubbs. Emily and Stubbs. Emily speaks to the Ghost Nation. People, they say they're going to be brought back to the first of them. Emily breaks away. And then the Ghost Nation leaves the guests, and the leader tells Stubbs, "You live only as long as the last person who remembers you." And for those that saw Coco, the fantastic Pixar film this past year, you cried a little bit. But again, kind of this living beyond, or beyond your normal life. why were they telling Stubbs that? Or is it just connected some way? Or is this another type of phrase like violent delights have violent ends?
Yeah, I think that, we were questioning sort of, why did Ghost Nation not respond to Maeve before? Yeah. Are they controlled by somebody else? Or are they just sort of on their rogue path? Now I believe that, and this, it's interesting because this leader, they call them the First of Us. So he's sort of like the Dolores of the group, right? He was the OG Ghost Nation person. I would not be I would not be surprised if somebody, whether it be Arnold Ford or someone else entirely, put this type of idea into his head, and now he's sort of been imparting it onto all the Ghost Nation people that came after him surreptitiously.
Yeah, no, I think that's if Dolores is her own, is on her own path, whether that it's really her own path or it is part of Ford's game. The first of the Ghost Nation might have his own agenda that he is fulfilling, seemingly to acquire the guests and not kill them, just leave them.
Yeah, and I think that the line that he whispers to him is interesting because it actually connects to another line that Bill says later on. Him unintentionally, I think, sort of referring to a Westworld thing here, where when he gets really hardcore with Delos and basically breaks all the bad news, I think he says, everyone prefers the memory of you to the man himself.
Yep.
So it's this idea that, Delos is living on in people's memories, but maybe in a different way than he actually was living, sort of like the way that he's living now. So again, this idea of memory and this just giant philosophical idea of what makes a person, if it's your consciousness in another body, are you still you, which is always a nice thing to chew on, much like that steak that Jack mentioned before. But it's nice to see sort of reverberations with it across different storylines in this episode.
Yeah.
My favorite scene in the whole thing was the wife turned to the husband and said, "You had to live out your fantasies. Now it's going to get us killed." I thought that was probably the best line of the whole episode.
Did anyone strike close to you, Jack? Close to home?
Well, it's kind of like you're married. You turn around, you've done something, and you're not going to be able to live it down,
or not live at all. Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't matter.
This is the last memory I have. Thanks.
What did you guys think of the fact that Ghost Nation, like the leader said that, and then they just disappeared?
Yeah.
Like, do you think they were there to just impart that information and go? Do you think they might have been called away last minute? Because they also, they didn't even run away. It seemed like they almost teleported. Like, they almost have mythical powers.
They just went out like ghosts.
They Batmaned out where, just like you're there and you turn around and Batman's gone.
I think they were...
Now I know what it feels like. That was Stubbs.
Perfect.
But
I'm the darkness.
It's another Nolan. He was involved in that, right?
That's true.
Some capacity. But yeah, no. I don't think they were called away. I think they just fulfilled whatever their core function was in all of this.
I agree.
To me, but I wouldn't be shocked if they were called away to do something else. So I'm not going to discredit it, Mike. I think it deserves recognition.
Get some extra credit there.
We go back to Bernard and Elsie. Bernie wakes. Elsie says all of this runs on a different OS. Bernie recognizes it as the same key that Abernathy had in his brain. Elsie explains why his memories are all over the place. He is experiencing them like they're all happening at the same time. Again, another Nolan favorite. Knows that he's been here recently. Maybe Ford sent him. They weren't building hosts. Same hardware. Code is different. Language is different. Not code, really. So, knowing the totality of the episode, this is kind of just hitting us over the head with the clues. But watching it live and not quite being there yet, maybe it's not as over there. But there's not much subtlety there in what Bernie is saying. Elsie hears sound from another room. Bernard doesn't want to go in, which I don't blame him. Like, blinking red lights and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, maybe we should avoid this. But Elsie, she's brave. He remembers it wasn't hosts they were making here. It was something else. And Elsie breaks in. So thoughts here on Elsie's bravery? And
I thought Elsie was toast. I thought she was gonna, I honestly thought
one
she
and
was gonna
done
be
after
killed.
everyone clamored for Shannon Woodward. She's back and they're just going to kill her off again. No, she seems pretty infallible at this rate. I thought it was interesting that when Bernard woke up, Elsie said specifically, you should be feeling a bit more like yourself.
Yeah.
When that does not seem to be the case whatsoever.
Yeah, absolutely. Still spacey, and then you get him experiencing it all at the same time is really trippy, and it does answer his time jumps all over the place, and we kind of question, okay, when he's zoning out, is Charlotte just seeing him there zone out in other time? But the explanation that he's experiencing it all at the same time would say that no, it's people that are around him maybe don't notice him jumping back and forth through his different memories since they aren't actually cataloged in order.
I also noticed that these texts, at least from the screen that I was watching, did they have baby blue tinted lab coats? I can't remember what the lab coats of the technicians of anything were, but do we, again, if we're going back to this idea that maybe they were a different facility, maybe they were a secret team working on something, maybe the subtle color changes in wardrobe sort of hints towards that.
Yeah, I think so, because it's not normal what they were wearing, or not like everything else. So, no, I think it's a good call out. We then go back to Bill and Lawrence. It's raining. Craddock is terrorizing people. Lawrence is getting beat up. He says that death is a friend of mine. He starts to dance with Lawrence's wife. Craddock has Lawrence's wife bring him a nitro drink. Craddock says he served death well and it will watch over us as we cross these lands. Then we go to a Neo Morricone style sequence where Bill sees what is happening in the town. It's matched with the memory of finding his dead wife. And then Bill kind of says, you think death favors you, that it brought you back. But death's decisions are final. It's only the living that are in constant waver, unknowing what they want. Death is true. You think you know death, but you don't. You didn't recognize him sitting across from you this whole time. And then he badassly takes a broken bottle, shoves it into Craddock's neck, takes out everyone, takes the nitro from Lawrence's wife's hands and forces it down Craddock's throat. And, tells Craddock, don't worry, amigo, I'm here now watching over you. Gives the gun to Lawrence, and Lawrence shoots the gun, blowing up Craddock. Amazing sequence, great visuals. Again, very like a Neo Morricone, Good, the Bad, the Ugly, and all his other films. But very stylized, and just a really moving sequence, I thought. Greatly acted as well.
I will say it's probably my, only 14, like Mike said, only 14 episodes in, but might it be my favorite scene in the entire series. It was perfect as far as I'm concerned. It just was everything. It's just the acting, everything was just perfect. I mean, I'm a Western fan anyway, but it just was perfect. I mean, it was just outstanding.
Well, I think it's because we were so used to seeing, Ed Harris behave in a specific way, almost selfishly, very, very uncaring towards these other hosts, that to see him as emotion. Yeah, and as almost like a host, but he almost self-actualized in this moment on his own emotional path, where he realizes, it's weird to say, I'm just coming to this realization, he has his own reverie, where he remembers he has this associative memory with the rain of walking in and finding his wife with her wrist slit in the bathtub, and then sort of has his own moment where he comes to his own and realizes that he needs to, chase these people away. I think Craddock has a really interesting perspective as well, because you just assume him to be super callous, but he still believes that Dolores is the devil or the mistress of death who brought him back to life. Because he says, she sent me back to do its bidding because I do it with such goddamn style. The fact that he said she makes me believe that because Dolores was the one to directly do it, that he believes she is I don't know, supernatural or something. But it's
well, you think she brought him back to life. It would make sense that he thinks that.
Yeah, absolutely. But then he also then forsakes her and runs away from her. You would think that he would still want to fall in line with her, but now he thinks he's sort of immortal. He almost thinks that he's a human in a host world of hey, they can't do anything to me. now we have this reversal where the human comes into his own and realizes, like, no, I can actually affect you, and is able to kill him and stop him from, running willy-nilly all over the town. I agree with Jack. It's just so well done. I love the speech, especially ending with, you didn't recognize him sitting across from you the entire time.
Right. That was a great line.
Such a good line. Just such a really well done scene. I feel like a good escalation of William's character, even though, as Ford alludes to later on, it's not he hasn't completely gone into white hat territory yet.
No, but he donned an old friend in a white hat there for a minute, it seemed.
Well, Ed Harris he just has cold, dark eyes. I mean, he's perfect for this part. I mean,
if you ever met Ed, just tell him that. It's like, you just have cold, dark eyes.
Well, I'm saying that as a compliment. It's acting. I mean, it's I've said 1,000 times that if someone can make you laugh without saying anything, or just get an emotion out of you without saying it, his look, it was just, you believed that he was thinking, he was seeing, these flashbacks and everything he was thinking about. It was just amazing. Just an amazing scene.
Yeah,
so I'm giving Ed a compliment. So that if you're listening, thumbs up, buddy. If you're not, then don't worry about it.
And I love that he gets Lawrence to sort of take the last shot too. Right. That's something where he's the one that's usually going around, spreading all this violence, but he's able to actually think of Lawrence, and maybe again he also sympathizes with his story and gives him the opportunity to get revenge at the guy who has been toying with his wife in his own life for so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you mentioned Craddock, the way he's speaking, he's kind of like that guy that met a famous person once and now thinks like they're best friends and they hang out all the time and brag to everybody. That's kind of seeming Craddock and his brush with death. But with Craddock blowing up like that, I think that's safe to say it's the last we'll see of Craddock, right? I mean, he's in a bunch of pieces. There's not really reassembling him at this point. Right?
I think Craddock is gone.
That's a wrap on Craddock. Unless, I don't know, maybe he's the host body that's cast the human in him. We're not sure at this point. We're gonna have to go in there. We're always gonna have to put a little bit of an if on each and every wrap on a person. But yeah, I mean, I think he was a fun sort of character to watch over 3 episodes, to see his interaction with Dolores and to see him sort of going back to another Greek, trope, fall under his own sort of hubris that he feels like he has now conquered death, but death very quickly conquers him.
Yep, exactly.
It would cheap. I mean, I don't think they're going to bring him back, but if they brought him back, it would cheapen the scene. I mean, it would just.
Well, and I think that's probably in terms of him just blowing him up is like, okay, yeah, there's no bringing him back.
Open your mouth.
He's dead now. He's dead now, and it also just a badass way to kill a bad guy, right? I mean, that's pretty cool.
It was nice.
Again, it smacks of like a Ennio Morricone, just like a cool when Clint Eastwood had the bulletproof vests underneath, and just like just a cool
spoiler.
What has it been? 50 years since
it was actually sheet
Fistful
metal.
Of Dollars.
It wasn't
well, he engineered one, MacGyver.
You think I'm just saying. You think one of them would have tried a headshot, but that's just me.
So we then go to Delos version 149. Bill arrives approximately 2 weeks before Ford's game began. Right, if he left him there and he was there for 2 weeks, to me, if I'm putting timeline, if it's after his wife's death, this might be like his last time before he went into the park where we met him for the first time.
I was about to say, because it feels like, because when they find him down there, I'm wondering, how long ago did Delos sort of go rogue and break out? I mean, I'd like to assume that when Bill left them, I mean, who knows? He might have just had a quick turnaround, like had a quick shave, and then went back into the park, and that's when we see him in season 1. Yeah, right before Ford's big reveal. So I could see that happening, because it would be weird. Again, we don't know how secluded this lab is, but if Delos killed this technician, it would be weird for them to just be hanging down there for a while now.
Yeah, true, very true. And we find out the reason that they keep doing this is because he keeps reaching a cognitive plateau every few days or more. Your mind rejects reality, rejects yourself. This is the 149th time we've brought you back. And you've lasted 35 days. Another year or two, we might crack it. Have you viable long term? The thing is, I'm not so sure anymore. I'm beginning to think this whole enterprise was a mistake. People aren't meant to live forever. You were a horrible person in real life, and everyone prefers the memory of you than the man yourself. Tells him Juliet committed suicide, which, rocks him. Then he starts calling out for Logan, tells him Logan is dead, he overdosed, couldn't handle reality, and your wife's gone. The world is better off without you, possibly me too. Jim freaks out. Jim freaks out. Bill leaves. Tech doesn't understand. He was perfectly stable. And Bill tells Tech to leave him for observation. So we assume the one that we run into later is Delos version 149, if he was left there, because that's the same dead Tech that's in there.
Right, I agree.
But interesting they said he was perfectly stable before you went in there. So, again, is the reality that he is dead, and he's actually once presented with the fact that he is not in the body anymore, is that the part that they just might not ever be able to figure out in this game?
I mean, it's interesting as well looking at how Bill reacts in this scene, because I'm trying to remember. I forget if he puts like a timestamp on how long ago Juliet died, but what if it was a thing where he was so raw from that experience that he sort of wanted to take it out on him? The guy who, he connects to all this because, Logan's dead. Emily, it seems like, kind of forsake him. She's sort of in her own fort of forlorn hope. And so he just sort of goes to take out his anger, where it seems like, as the technician is saying, he's sort of like shaking the cage to rile up the animal a bit. I think it's interesting to sort of, place where his mood goes. And again, if it leads directly into him going back to the park, that makes sense as to why he, on the first day, immediately scalps a guy and, finds the maze underneath. He just is in this crazy mood. I guess we can also confirm as well, R.I.P. Logan.
Yeah.
I guess that's an official series wrap on him. Jack,
we'll
never see old Logan.
I almost said I'm done with this show.
Jack, if you want to see an old man Logan, there's a great movie out there called Logan. Check it out.
Okay, I'll
But
yeah, and I would have loved in a perfect world, if we're wondering who would whose mind would become a host. I feel like in a perfect world, or in perfect Twilight Zone erotic sense, Logan would be great, because Logan was so callous to the host that it would be, and especially his final words that we saw him say while he was shooting up. It would be fun to watch him become the thing that he sort of has grown to hate the most, but unfortunately, it does seem like they won't be bringing him back from the dead. They learned from Delos, as William said, that maybe this isn't the best thing to be doing.
But I was saying earlier. I said, would it be easier to bring someone consciousness back if they weren't so pig-headed and strong-willed? I mean, Delos he's got a tremendous ego. He's going to do things his way. You know what I'm trying to say? Would it be easier if someone was a little more flexible?
I would assume they would experiment on different minds to figure that out, Jack.
And why him? Unless this was his long range goal, was to just leave him there with to suffer. And it's telling your Juliet's dead. Your wife is dead. Logan overdosed.
Well, again,
screw you. You're going to sit here and remember this forever.
I think maybe that's just Bill taking it out on Jim, because this might be just right after Juliet's death.
But why Jim Delos? Why was he chosen?
Well, because I think Jim Delos, the whole reason he funded this whole thing was to live forever. To me, it smacks of was it Wayland Corp in Prometheus, the Aliens prequel, headed up by our good friend Damon Lindelof and company. Whereas, this very rich person, and it's that kind of story has been done a million times. Somebody is so rich, but it's the old phrase, you can't take it with you, but what if you could? And seemingly the pitch or the reason that Jim Delos decided to fund Westworld was probably to, figure out how he could live beyond his own death. Because he even says it, this is what I've been, pissing away my money on. It's finally paid off, that I'm able to escape or death, something that no other person's been able to do. So if you have that much money and that's what you want to do, it's similar to how some rich people cryogenically freeze their brain and stuff like that.
Yeah, Walt Disney.
Yeah, well, it's the rumored Walt Disney, but others have.
Because I'll ask this question to you guys. If you could do it, if it was possible, would you do it?
And I think this episode really does flesh out that idea or bring up that idea of if you could, what would it be, or is it the right thing to do? And I think, dead is dead, and if you coming back, like, would you really want to come back?
That's my question, is because, like, I feel like when you come back, at least from the pop culture I've taken in, there's no like resurrections where people are like, this is great. I've lost everyone that I know, but you know what? At least I'm back and living. It's one of these things where, like, even if you might get unceremoniously taken out, it's called like a resting place for a reason. If you agitate yourself back up, you're going to be in a completely different state than you were when you went to sleep. I think, to your point, Jay, Bill says right here, people aren't meant to live forever.
Yeah.
And maybe that's because, again, he might be coming in a little hot because he saw a bunch of people that he was close to die. So he sort of comes, and that's another reason why I think he wanted to sort of shake the cage and almost purposely abort the project, because he realized, like, this is a stupid endeavor to explore in the first place. But I purposely, and maybe there are listeners out there who disagree, I would be totally fine going out the way I went out. Because I feel like there's going to be more regrets if you come back than if you just let things be.
And my argument always is, if, say, you lived forever, time would have no meaning. So 1,000 years to an immortal would be like 10 years to me. So it doesn't actually make a difference. The older you get, the shorter time is. And it just gets really, really fast to where it doesn't mean anything anyway. So life is what it is. Enjoy it. That's my thought, Jack. But I know you're always one that you want to come back and see the future. But
I would just like to see, just come back. It doesn't have to be forever. Just like a few minutes. Go, wow, that's pretty cool. All right.
So that's what happens to Delos. He has a few minutes, and then he gets burned up to a crisp and starts all over again.
But he's stuck in a room. He can't get out and see. He wanted to see the sun again. He wanted to, smoke a cigar. He wanted to sail his boat. Then he couldn't do some other things. But it just, to me, coming back and seeing, okay, with people from the 1900 came back today and saw, holy crap, this is what you have.
We'd probably it's the devil, it's all the devil, what the hell's going on?
I don't know. I've always thought about what's going to be like 100 years from now.
Jack, all I have to do is just watch the fantastic film Captain America, The First Avenger, I think, if you want to.
Yeah, specifically the last 10 minutes, and you'll figure out why that's not a good idea.
Okay, all right. So it's just, so you're saying it's a down, because even, I don't know if you guys watch Lucifer. There's R.I.P. I believe at the time of recording this, it aired its final episode for now. Yeah, I can't believe they canceled it. Anyway,
Fox, it was a bloodbath at Fox.
They did bring NBC brought back 9/9.
Yes, they did.
Bigger bloodbath, Fox or the Labs?
I'd say Fox right now. They're just cutting everything.
Fox seemingly.
So somebody needs to do like a Photoshop of the final scene where Bernard is getting the drones to kill all these guys, but put like the Fox logo on Bernard's head.
Fox logo on Bernard's head, and then like logos from all the different shows.
Well, don't they have they still have the Fox robot?
Oh, the football robot?
The football ones, yeah.
He could do it. All right.
Oh, man.
Lucifer's.
Elsie and Bernard go into the thrashed Delos room. We see a picture of his granddaughter, perhaps. A little foreshadowing there. The tech is dead. We see a mutilated Delos. He attacks. He says, I'm all the way down now. I can see all the way to the bottom. You'd like to see what I see? Bernard stops him before he kind of takes out Elsie with a broken piece of glass. And then he says, they said there was two fathers, one above and one below. They lied. There was only one at the bottom, and when you looked up, it was his reflection laughing back down at you. You aim to cheat the devil. You owe him at least an offering. And then Elsie incinerates him. What are the thoughts there? Is that Jim Delos' realization that, the afterlife or whatever this is that he is right now isn't what it seems, and you try to cheat the devil, but there is no cheating the devil in the end.
Cheating the devil is also an interesting idea, because it goes back to what Bill was saying, I think, back in episode 2, about how these people go to Westworld to get their sins out because they think that they're not being watched, but they are being watched. So it's sort of like them attempting to hide their sins from this proverbial devil, when really they're being, exposed the entire time for what they are. I mean, I think the analogy also translates interestingly to the Ford-Arnold stuff, where I feel like in the first season we were led to believe, okay, Arnold good, Ford bad, but then we sort of realized that they were actually both thinking towards the same cause at the end of the day, and so they were sort of working in tandem as, if you're from a human perspective, they kind of both look like devils at that point in time.
Yeah, absolutely. Elsie asks if she just killed a human or a host. Bernie says both. Bernie thinks Ford sent him here to print another human. Asks Elsie for her help. He finally knows what he wants to do. He's finally in control. Elsie will join him, but no more lies, and you'd never hurt me again, all right, fella?
Dun, dun, dun.
Bernie remembers what happens there. Drones killed them all, seemingly at his command, and he stomps the last tech. Elsie asks if everything is okay, and Bernie says everything is fine, so already lying.
So...
Run, Elsie, run.
This might be my little hot take wackadoo, whatever you want to call it, of the week.
What, is that a new one, wackadoo?
No, he's had the wackadoo for a while.
Before.
You said wackadoo? Okay,
yes.
I apologize. I can't keep track.
Thank you. There's do the strand and there's do the wackadoo.
I'm like Delos. Sometimes I just kind of sputter on things. I can't remember.
So when in the end of the first episode, we hear Bernard say, I killed them all. And I remember back at that time thinking that maybe he was just meaning that metaphorically. What if since his memory's jumping all over the place, what if he's referring to this?
Maybe.
What if he's referring to the fact that he was the one who was responsible for killing all these techs, and whether he's wrongly associating himself with that, or whether he's just sort of having that memory at that point in time. I mean, this is the most literal example of him killing them all. So that's
far,
like the biggest association I can draw to it at this point in time.
Yeah, I mean, it's either that or, if he's totally in control now, is there more deaths to come? I mean, I think you could take it either way.
At least one.
I think you're right, Mike. As it stands now, him saying I killed them all definitely could be this, since he's kind of his memories are all kind of happening at once. It absolutely could be that.
What about in the water where Teddy's floating? Maybe that's what he was talking about.
Well, exactly. I mean, it could be that, but it could be the other thing.
That's the literal interpretation. I guess I was going for keep digging below that. I also think it's interesting that Bernard says, like we talked about before, I wasn't in control. Now Ford's dead. I get to decide who I want to be. Very like white hat, black hat.
Yes.
But it does seem like, as we're talking about, I still don't think he has necessarily a choice in what hat he has. And I'm assuming by those ominous last words that we also think his tenuous partnership with Elsie is probably going to break up pretty soon, right?
Yeah, I feel bad for Elsie. I'm just like,
I feel bad.
It's like, don't trust him. You got to get rid of him.
She's dead girl walking.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, she's asking to be killed though. Just going into the flashing red light room. I mean, that's like, horror movie 101. You don't do that.
It's the whole John Locke thing. You've been given a second chance. Don't blow it.
Yeah, I know we raved about the, very, appropriately so, about the whole Bill in the Rain scene, but this, scuffle and final Delos scene in the room with the red light flashing was pretty damn terrifying.
Yes.
Very effective.
Yeah.
It was cool to watch him like all cut up, and you can sort of see the metal lying beneath, which again pairs really nicely with his statement about I can see all the way to the bottom, like he can almost see all the way down to his metallic skin and realize who he truly is. So this was it was like one of the reasons, again, why I love this episode. There were these captivating scenes that really just kept you on the edge of your seat. Now, I didn't think either one of them were going to die, but there was so much creepiness going on that it was, and especially to watch this host of Delos sort of progress, or I guess degress over time, to see it culminate in that was a really cool way to finish off that character. Assumingly so. I don't think we're seeing him again.
And Elsie made a rookie mistake. You don't. If you're in this situation, you just shoot to kill. You don't say stop or whatever she said.
Now take it easy there, fella.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, she hasn't had the experience yet where everyone else has had the experience of freeze all motor functions only for them to not listen. So I guess this is her first time. It comes a little bit later than everyone else.
Well, she's lucky Bernard was there to save her.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, if this is Delos' end, I think it's a fitting one. I think it is the kind of fitting answer to that question. If you try to cheat death, there is no cheating death. And if you do, it could be even a worse, more horrific thing than just letting yourself die whenever that time comes. But yeah, really heady stuff. So Ford had him print another human, not Delos. What's our main theories here? I think it's another Arnold, and that is him. But what are kind of your guys' other running theories? If there's the other human that's out there that Bernard is now going to seek with Elsie.
Jack, is this part of your crackpot theory, or do you have another idea?
No, I thought it might be Arnold, but I can't think of anyone else.
Yeah, I would assume it's Arnold just because I think that, we've had Ford before, and Ford seems like he's already has his hands in a lot of stuff going on with these other people, so I don't know if he necessarily needs to come back. His ideas are sort of out there. And I think the idea of I'm thinking more so about, like, what would be the most fun narratively speaking to bring back. And I feel like if we bring back Arnold and sort of have him face off against Bernard, who is dealing with Arnold's feelings, but at the same time, like he says, he is trying to sort of forge his own path. I feel like that's the most interesting. Maybe there's an entirely new character who's like going to die. Maybe it's Juliet. Who knows? But that's sort of my leading theory at this point. I agree is that, Ford.
That was my theory.
Yeah, is that Ford was the Juliet one?
Yeah.
Sorry, I talk too much.
That's all right. I just said something.
It's all good. Mike said it better anyway, so
he did it. It was I'll give you. Let's call that your wackadoo.
All right, we'll call it's another wackadoo. Got 2 for 1 this week.
Oh man, yeah. I think it's interesting, and I will be curious to see how that plays out this season, or how much of an impact it has. But an Arnold Bernard showdown would be fun in the end,
and confusing.
It would be. We
would totally get the moment of like, Elsie, you have to shoot the real Arnold.
No, I'm Arnold.
Yeah, that's going to happen.
A 60s comedy, right back, right?
Or no, you do the Spock, evil Spock. Just have like one with a goatee, one without. Anyway,
or maybe the Bernard will like put the glasses on. And
yeah, there you go.
There
What's
you go.
Tell? What's the tell that it's exactly. But then it'll end. It's like you don't really know which one she killed. And then to close out the episode with Bill and Lawrence, the town will ride with Bill. Ford speaks to Bill through Lawrence's daughter, saying, this one good deed does not make up for your past sins. And you still don't understand the game we're playing. If you're looking forward, you're looking in the wrong direction. Bill's posse rides out over a beautiful landscape and runs into Grace, a.k.a. Bill's daughter.
Dun, dun, dun.
So I guess a few things to this, as always. What do you make of Lawrence's daughter, who again serves as a great emissary for Ford, saying, you need to look, if you're looking forward, you're looking in the wrong direction. I feel like it's inward, sort of like what they were talking about with the maze, of how it's not a journey, upward, it's a journey inward that Bill's going to be able to escape by like looking inside himself. But is that too heady for this type of game?
No, I think that's right. I think that's right.
She freaked me out.
One, I like Ford kind of showing up in these different people or these different hosts. I think that's cool, and that's to your point. I don't think we need Ford to be reborn if his consciousness is or he's able to communicate at different point through all of these different hosts. Right. I think it's really cool. So, but I think it can be more introspective instead of literal. I think absolutely. I think that's a possibility. Let's talk about that this person that we thought was Grace is actually Bill's daughter. And what does that mean? What does that mean for Bill's journey? If she hates him so much that she wouldn't mind him being tortured and killed by the Confederados right in front of her, what is the story there for? And she seemingly doesn't want to get out. Maybe alive either. Same for.
She's playing a game. He's playing a game, right?
Yeah, they're both.
What is the ultimate goal? I mean, what is the?
I mean, we've been talking a lot about fate this episode. What if Ford controlled some part of Ghost Nation to somehow know that Emily was going to run away, that drove her into Bill so that he could sort of find his own journey inward and then find the door there. And there's a lot of factors in play there, but I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility that I think that, we just talked about him having a big moment with Craddock happening to, spark something within him in Lawrence's hometown. I feel like these are, more epiphanies waiting to come with this estranged daughter walking back into his life.
Maybe you can tell Grace or say, hey, I'm not the same person I was. My eyes are open now. I see I made some mistakes.
Or if this was right after his wife, her mother's death, like maybe they both went to the park to cope with it and to seemingly kind of dash it all in kind of throwing their life at the whim to this park. And now that the game has changed, they're kind of seeing or feeling alive for the first time. Or adventure chasing post this death that maybe was very traumatic for both of them.
Go ahead.
Did she coincidentally run into Bill, or did she know Bill was going to be in that area?
Yeah, well, I don't.
It's a big place.
I mean, it looked like she was riding towards him, so maybe she was looking for riders. But it's a good question. My question is, now that we know that Emily is his daughter, I guess, can we look back now at like her scene in Westworld and can we sort of like compare their personalities? Like, are they acting similar? Because to your point before, if they do have the sort of the same attitude, that might help them work together, or it might pit them against each other. Because if they're looking for different games, then it's gonna be less of a chance that they're gonna be sticking together necessarily.
Well, she had her own map. That's true. He was, scalping people to find his map for a game. I'll be curious to find out if she was further along than he was, or behind, and maybe they'll match notes and they'll kind of come together in advance. Or to your point, maybe they'll kind of compete against each other. I don't know. But her being in Rajland, if she really was initially to look out to try and find her father, I think she would have been in Westworld, where he seemed to spend a lot of time. But given that the tiger kind of chased her out and she just kind of showed up in Westworld, to me that lends me to think maybe more she stumbled upon him, or she knew that he was over there, and now she needs to trying to find her dad to try and get out. Maybe
that, or was she guided that direction? Was the tiger chasing her to that direction to get her towards Westworld?
If we're kind of playing that Ford is still kind of playing this game, then probably.
Yeah. I would say that's probably pretty likely that's what happened. It's too big a coincidence that they just showed up at the same place.
Yeah, I mean, watch this all turns out to be one big coincidence, and we have no idea. But I think right now we shouldn't give things the benefit of the doubt. I think we're right to say there's some larger path for all these people that are slowly converging on one another, that Ford and possibly Arnold are just slowly nudging these people together. I think that's a good theory to go with for now, because
Ghost Nation took them to another location.
Yeah,
and she was able
maybe they took them to a location that was conducive to, if you keep going straight, you'll end up hitting where the man in black might leave the next day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's more likely.
All right. But still, as we said, overall, I think a fantastic episode, pinnacle of season 2 so far. I'm excited to see where it goes from here, I think. And we also have more clarity, possibly, to where it goes from here. Some great stuff out of the Riddle of the Phoenix, or just Riddle of the Phoenix. All right, well, that's what we thought. It's time to get into what you all thought for some listener feedback. Here we go.
Listener feedback.
All right, it's listener feedback time. Got some emails to jump into here. First is from last week. The Skarsgård is not in Rajland. Jack, dripping sarcasm to follow. Longtime listener from the Lost States. You're driving me insane calling the guy in Indialand, Rajland, whatever, a Skarsgård. This his name is Neil Jackson, and his character's name is Nicholas. The Skarsgård brothers, Carl Strand, the chief security officer, Baldy, who is leading the cleanup crew on the park. So
he said he
looked like a Skarsgård, in all fairness.
And to be fair, all bald guys do look alike.
It is. Now he said I said it?
Yeah, I think I said it. I led with it because he just looks like a Skarsgård. So
I just agreed with you because I'm bald, and what else would I know?
So maybe it was less that I thought he was an actual Skarsgård, but it's just he looked like one, so that was my nickname for him.
I just agreed with you, so I think I should be. Who sent that email?
Hold on, go back to it. Mike.
All right, Mike. I'm not petty.
I'm sorry, Jack. I had to reach out to you through email to finally make you understand.
Yeah, Mike in Arizona / Arlington, Virginia. So he's.
I'm not petty, Mike, but an apology would be very.
I'm
helpful.
Intrigued to know about Mike's 2 different locations.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are very disparate climates.
Yes.
I live in Arizona and Western Virginia.
Yes.
West Virginia,
Arlington. Yeah.
Arlington. So Eastern.
All right, so Mike, just a simple "I'm sorry" will be all right next week.
All right, you got it.
This next one is from Jim. Hey, guys, I listen to a lot of Westworld podcasts, and so far, no one has addressed the fact that there seems to be at least 2 sets of Delos troops trying to bring order to the park. Not 2 sets at the same time, but one group sent in the very beginning of the uprising. We see them get wiped out in the 3rd episode, or at least some of them. There could be others in different parks or different parts of Westworld, and then we see a group arrive 2 weeks later in episode 1. That probably explains why it took 2 weeks for them to arrive. They were only sent in after the first groups failed. So what are the thoughts there? Because it seems like Charlotte and even Bernard believing Charlotte saying the real cavalry is not coming until we secure whatever this Lazarus Pit project is or something else. But Jim, what do you think of Jim's thoughts here? That they had some people there, but they all got wiped out. So the bigger cavalry came in after the first group failed.
Well, Jim, we got you covered because we talked about that earlier on in this podcast. So hopefully we've satiated that part for you. But I would think, and maybe I'm being wrong here. I would think that so the first wave got taken out, and I do think that maybe the communications did get taken down by the hosts or by Maeve or by somebody else. And as a result, I do think that Strand's comment about it taking them 2 weeks to, get there between finding out what happened and everything. I feel like that's accurate. I have no reason to think that statement is fraudulent at all. So I would believe that we had this first wave of security people. They got killed off. Communications were down. Maybe once they got perked up by something that we're going to find out in future episodes, that's when Strand and his gang found out. They made their way from the mainland to this island where all the worlds are contained, and that's where we are now.
Yep, exactly.
My answer is I stopped listening to Jim after he said he listened to other podcasts.
Oh, come on. There's a lot of other fantastic ones out there. Let's see. This one comment on last week's episode. Hey, I was surprised nobody brought up Major Mustache Colonel Brigham being played by Kate's Marshall, escort from Flight 815. I thought it looked pretty awkward with the mustache the whole time because I knew him from something, but I couldn't figure out for a while. The actor is Frederick Lane, by the way. I didn't realize that. I was like, he looks so familiar. But yeah.
I knew it, but I didn't bring it up.
Well, he lasted for 1 episode less than he did on Lost, so...
Well, I mean, he's back in flashbacks.
Yeah, I guess that counts.
Next one here is a theme question. Hey, guys, I used to listen to you during the Lost years. Stumbled across you again in my search for Westworld Enlightenment. I just started rewatching Season 1 and noticed during the opening credits it has 2 hosts having sex. In this second season, a host is with a baby. Then when I saw the credits for Season 2, I thought the mother was Maeve and wondered if her intense connection to her daughter that passes through her programming could perhaps be because she actually had the baby. I mean, if they create a host with lifelike skin, the ability to secrete fluids, and be indistinguishable from humans, couldn't they also have made them able to carry a life? They can already raise a sheep fetus in an artificial womb in this world. So it might not be that far-fetched. Just a thought and a crazy theory, but I'm comfortable enough to stick to it.
Is there any chance we can delete this part and I can steal it as my crackpot theory?
No, it's too late. Already
okay.
hit. But interesting theory, right? Because we haven't seen
theory.
that. In it being in the theme here, or the opening sequence, title sequence. It's an interesting thought that I don't think we've brought too much discussion to.
Yeah, I guess we haven't really seen any pregnant hosts.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it would be like it probably would be great for narratives, but it'd probably be like a burden for maintenance, right? Because you're essentially dealing with someone who is fabricating the life of a pregnant woman. And I don't know how many people were like, we can go to pan for some gold with this prospector, or we can, help get some ice cream for the pregnant woman. no offense, pregnant women are absolutely lovely, and they do the Lord's work by carrying children. But it doesn't seem like the biggest adventure, you know.
Well, maybe there's another part of the park that we don't know about where that's
pregnant land. OBGYN land.
Well, maybe people want to become doctors, and
or I mean, it's
and you're delivering a baby,
or if there's like it's a fertility option, like if maybe you can't have a child yourself, maybe you can have a host be your womb for hire.
Yeah, maybe that'd be weird, like a host surrogate.
Yeah, host surrogate.
That's an interesting idea.
Maybe you're on an island and you have trouble getting pregnant, and you have to find a host to have the baby, right?
But there's also this element from Jurassic Park where they genetically made them all female, so they couldn't reproduce. But in there, since they used the frog DNA in there, that they could kind of change sexes, and they were able to reproduce. Thus, life finding a way. Could there be a similar element in this show, or if they're going to really take over the world, there would have to be some reproductive capabilities or some regeneration of their people.
I mean, we just saw machines that can do that.
Yep.
So,
yep. But if they run out of the machine, it's an interesting theory.
I love the theory. I'm just going to say I love it.
I love it. I'm just wondering, like, what the logistics would be behind running a park like that. Like, wouldn't that potentially result in,
maybe not a park. Maybe they just figure it out, or maybe like Maeve was an experiment or something, just to test it out, and maybe that's why there's such a connection. But I mean, yeah,
I think you mentioned surrogate. Maybe that's what they were. Another side business they were doing. I mean, who knows? I mean, it's an industry.
It's an industry.
I like the theory because she is so attached to having the daughter. So I love it.
All right, this next email, host in the real world. Hey guys, longtime listener, back in the Lost podcast days. If the park has been open for 34 years, surely some other millionaires or billionaires have approached and the company and offered to buy a host for themselves. With the speed that technology moves, another company is bound to have introduced this type of technology, create AI hosts for doing jobs in the real world. In 34 years, everyone should have a host at home. If you look at Disneyland, when it opened initially, no one was close, and now there are so many other theme parks that are as good as or even better than Disney. I don't know if I would agree with that, Steve. That's just my personal thoughts. Just something that has bugged me since the start of the show. Steven.
I mean, first I would say, don't call them Shirley, Steve. That's ridiculous. I mean, it's a good question that you would think that we'd have like a Slugworth situation from Willy Wonka, right? Where like somebody would try to leak information out, but like, and that's what I think maybe we were thinking Charlotte was doing initially with trying to, get some code out of the park, but it is a wonder that they've locked it down. Maybe it's just because Ford and Arnold are so brilliant that nobody could replicate what they were doing, and maybe there were other attempts that just haven't been talked about. But it's a good point.
Well, it's kind of like the art of it. Like people can have the same paint and canvas as Picasso had, but he's the only one that can do that. And so, if art is a big part of it, possibly Ford and Bernard and what they have is replaceable, or maybe there is, but they're just not at the same level, just because they're missing whatever that artist's touch is that maybe Ford brought to it. Who knows? All right, this next email is titled Episode 4. Hey team, really loving having another TV show similar to Lost and be able to experience it alongside another quality podcast from you guys. So just a big thanks. First up. Haven't emailed since the last day, so I thought it was about time. Now, I'm probably not going to be the first to say this, but man, that opening scene gave me the feelings of the opening to Season 2 of Lost and the way they introduced the Hatch. Loving this show so much and the mystery surrounding it that they brought into this season. And this episode was one of the best for me. Last week, I was sure Bernard was glitching because he uploaded the info from Abernathy, but this week, I'm not as sure. Very happy Elsie is alive and well, and looking forward to her adventures with Bernard going forward. My crackpot theory. The memory ball that Bernard slipped into his pocket in this episode is for the host that was being created last season in the room where Teresa was killed by Bernard. It will be Ford's memory ball, but the host won't look like Ford. A way to bring Ford back without using Hopkins. Anyway, keep up the good work, and I hope to keep it less time in between emails. Brad from Melbourne, Australia. Brad, excited to have you emailing us back.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. And I was totally with you on that theory as well earlier, but I think these guys convinced me that it probably wouldn't make sense if you're going for assimilation of the new memory to put it in a different body. But I think it's a good idea on paper if you want to get Ford-like ideas into a different person without necessarily needing to bring Hopkins back.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe Hopkins is smart, or the Ford is smart enough to not freak out if he's not in his own body.
Do we know if Hopkins, does he want to come back? Is he done with it? Has he said anything?
I mean, he filmed something before episode 1, right? He did something goofy for that, and he obviously did voice work there. So I don't know. I feel like it would be weird to bring him back, though, right? Because I just feel like his death was such a game-changing moment.
Yes.
To suddenly bring him back almost feels like you're undoing something almost.
Yeah, it's kind of lessens it.
But you can think. I think what people were stunned with, they got an actor of that caliber to do a series. So maybe they said, okay, you can do. We'll do the series with you. You can do. I'll do the series, but I don't want to be on it for 5 years. So maybe that's what he said or something. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there. I could be wrong.
No, I think your theories always should warrant a thought of seriousness.
Thought of being seriousness or thought of being wrong?
No. Like I think yeah, we should take him seriously.
I'm just saying, if I'm Anthony Hopkins, am I going to want to do a series?
No, I think it's less about him coming. I think he has been supportive, and he seems like a pretty down to earth. But I think it just lessens his death. I think bringing him back to Mike's comments there. All right, next email here is titled WW204. Last week, a friend of mine from Germany visited me in Los Angeles. He was renting a DeLorean, and we drove it around the Universal Clock Tower and also the location used from Twin Pines Mall. And we had your podcast going in between blasts of Back to the Future's Alan Silvestri music. Congratulations. Your podcast has reached new heights. I'm so jealous I was not actually in that DeLorean. I love those cars, but I've never actually driven in one before.
You've never been in a DeLorean?
No, there's not just DeLoreans all over the place. Have you been in a DeLorean?
I have. It's not one of my dreams, but no, I haven't.
Oh.
Do you just think we could have been the first podcast to go back in time?
Yeah.
Back in time.
Yeah.
One thing about Westworld has gone from confusing to bugging me. How exactly do these bullets work? I thought at first perhaps there was imaginary bullets in the guns, and when you shot a host, those would be programmed to die, but we know there are actual bullets in the guns, just that they were programmed not to kill guests. How does that work? Is the velocity reduced when exiting the gun if aimed at a human? Thanks to Episode 3's Cold Open, we now seen what happens when a bullet would hit a human. It ping-pongs them like a paintball. But post-revolution, Dolores has somehow made the bullets lethal for humans. How is this possible technically, and what was done to make this change? I'm not sure how to make sense of this and would love your help dissecting this issue. The only obvious answer I can think of is what Jack says, that this is all virtual reality simulation. Kudos, Jack, on being the smartest guy in the room. Your biggest fan, not Ethan.
I love this email. just fantastic email.
Yeah, frame it, put it up on the wall.
No, I think we should just read it every week.
That's great.
Yeah, we really feel like we're in a time loop. I mean, he brings up a good point, I guess. I mean, my best guess would probably be what he's wagering right now, which is like, because all these guns they don't come in from outside sources, they're all in the park. Maybe they're programmed to identify who they're shooting, and if they're shooting, it used to be if they're shooting another host, but now if they're shooting a human, the velocity of the bullet changes to make more of a killing blow than it did when it was just, as he mentioned, it's more like a paintball pellet.
Yeah, but I would think, or maybe just the composition of it changes. They could do that. I don't know. I mean, it's a good question. I think we just accepted it.
Yeah, or maybe something where, like, I don't know, maybe it like explodes before impact. If it was just like a human to like prevent that much of an impact, whereas here it's more of a direct. I don't know. If it's been very clear, I don't know a lot about guns, so I'm just going to try my best to handle this delicate situation.
I'd attempt to answer it, but I want to remain the smartest person in the room.
Yes, was it open your mouth and like what? Answer all doubts as to whether or not you're the biggest fool or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, I'll defer that answer.
Oh man! So that was from Not Ethan, and now we have a closing out email from our good friend Ethan. A bit longer than last week's too, which is good. Hello. Before I start, let's go to it for a second. The 5th season of Lost Podcasts aren't load. Or IT for a second. The 5th season of Lost Podcasts aren't loading on the website. How do you expect me to live my life in these substandard conditions? I'm sorry, Ethan. We're currently we're moving over all of our feeds to a new host, Spreaker.
New host.
So there might be some issues this week or so, moving a lot of the feeds over. So if you notice any weird little glitches or stuttering from any of us, no, we accept this reality. We're just moving our consciousness over to a new host. Which
is 100% true.
Mr. Delos, what a crazy, awesome way to reveal this bit of the story. The way it was woven together with the climax of the episode, I think, has given us so far the best episode of the season. I think we all know what's going on, so I'll ask some minor questions. 1. If they can shut Old Man Delos down, why do they have to nuke the whole chamber? Seems like a waste of awesome, different colored vinyl to me. I think that's a good question. Maybe it's because his DNA is being spread around. It could contaminate the scientific approach.
That or just need a complete restart.
Yeah, well, he's also affected the environment, right? He's gone around and done things. So I think that, like, wiping him and bringing him back to life, if he's like, oh, this chair's out of sorts, I wonder who sat here. Oh, wait, it was me, blah, blah, blah. And then he glitches out again. Like, you want to do a hard reset. And I agree that it's a bad waste of furniture and vinyl and especially fish, but I guess it's necessary to produce like the perfect control environment to put one in.
It's a tax write-off. You can write it.
Maybe the insurance maybe covers it if it's damaged in a fire. Maybe they have sweet fire insurance.
What if it's damaged in 149 fires?
You're like, all right, this is really oddly specific happening.
Here's $20. Look the other way. Okay.
Number 2, would you ever describe your kid as capable? Not sure.
Is that for me?
Maybe.
No, I mean that's what that's how Bill describes Emily as whip smart and capable.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's true.
I mean, I would usually follow that up with like some sort of clarify, like capable of
anything,
activity. Insert gerund here.
Maybe that does shed a little light on their estrangedness, possibly.
Yeah.
Yay, Stubbs and Elsie. She's not my favorite Elsie yet. That's still Danica McKellar as Elsie Snuffin on The West Wing. Dolores and Maeve. I missed Maeve and Mike's non-Semitic hetero life mate, but I didn't really miss Dolores too much. Does this make me a bad person? I did miss Teddy. What is up with Bernard? How much of this is he holding back on purpose? I feel like he has done way worse things, and I'm so glad I get to see Jeffrey Wright every week. I listened to a major TV reviewer before the season started, and after 5 episodes in, he was disappointed that the show wasn't using Jeffrey Wright to their full advantage, and he wasn't doing much, so I was bummed going in. That guy was on crack, which I hear is like cocaine, but better. Lastly, I wanted to point out 2 of the most badass things I saw this week. One was the Bill scorches the earth in the rain sequence, and the next to last shot of Lawrence and Bill with red shirts riding into the sun. It was incredible. Also, my name is Jay, and I farted on the podcast 2 weeks ago.
You got caught.
Nicely done, Ethan. Nicely done. Not true, though. It was a digital manipulation.
It was a glitch. It was a malfunction. It wasn't a fart. It was a.
Is that your Jimmy Stewart?
No,
Little fart in Pottersville.
No, it's from the right stuff.
Hopefully that went through. I'm happy to play along, Ethan. Have a good week, Ethan. P.S. Please ask the audience to sign the Save the Expanse. It really is a great show, being cut down in its prime. Is that the FX show? Apparently, it's really good.
That's the former sci-fi show.
Sci-fi
apparently
show, that's it.
Is getting canceled. So yeah, I've not been able to see it. I've heard great things. I think I want to check it out this summer, but I know people have been putting forward a motion to get it back up again.
It's like I missed the last time I really got into one of those was the Save Chuck campaign where like everyone went to Subway and bought like Subway sandwiches.
What about the Save Jericho campaign when they mailed? What did they mail?
Oh, that's right.
Potatoes or something to CBS.
Yes. Yeah, those they're all fun. They're all fun.
We were going to try and save Flash Forward with sending kitchen sponges, but we never got it. We never got around to it.
That's a really deep reference that nobody's going to get checked, but I appreciate the reference.
Anybody who listened to our podcast would get it.
And it was also, I'm looking at it now, it was a big, like 20 tons of nuts they sent to CBS to bring back Jericho, and it worked for one season.
I was okay with them not bringing back Chuck because I didn't go to Subway until it was done. I said, Chuck's done.
Man, Subway. Do people still go to Subway? I haven't been in post Jared.
There goes our sponsor.
That's true. Sorry, Subway's usually a pretty easy sponsor. Sorry about that.
What was that show we were trying to bring back with the paintballs?
That was Community.
Oh, Community. That's right. Yeah,
because of the paintball episode.
Ah, there you go.
PPS. Seriously, I'm trying to rewatch Lost Set season 5 and I can't listen. Please help, Lafleur. Yes, again, like I said, we're moving hosts and feeds over, so there might be some weird, glitchy stuff going on as we transition this week, but it should all be back
and Ethan, if you recall, that was my best season for Crackpot Theory, so I'm sure we haven't lost that.
It's all somewhere. Yeah. We have to find Abernathy. We download it to his brain, and once we get him here, we can move everything over.
There you go.
All right, well, that wraps up our listener feedback, and it brings us to the momentous occasion of this episode, in which Jack spends weeks finally honing and crafting a crackpot theory of the week. Jack, why don't you take it away?
I think it's okay not to be right 2 weeks in a row. I'm just saying. Even Tony Gwynn was unsuccessful 6.5 times out of 10, right?
I don't know who that is, so you have no excuse.
You've never heard of Tony Gwynn?
I've heard. I have to look him up now.
He's a baseball player from San Diego.
We're done, Mike.
This is the straw that broke the camel's back, is me not knowing a San Diego baseball player.
Not just the San Diego baseball player, Mr. Padre. Come on, man.
He's not a baseball fan, let alone a Padre fan. There's very few.
I recognize your unintentional Jimmy Stewart impression. Doesn't that get me any points?
I'm just trying to stall. Oh, no, because I'm trying to avoid this crackpot theory. Can I have a wackadoo theory, maybe?
No, it's your crackpot theory. Just
what's higher on the scale, wackadoo or crackpot? I don't.
Well, personally, I think the wackadoos have been better.
I'm going to say this, and I think I've said it before, but I believe it, that Juliet is not dead. That she was there was a host in the bathtub. There was something that was done.
A host?
That she was not, and her daughter, and William are looking for in Westworld, in the park.
Do you think that she faked her death? Do you think someone faked her death for her?
She faked her death. She wanted out for some reason. She seemed a little edgy when we saw her in, was it episode 1? Or episode
that was 2.
2, yeah, when she said, Emily, get away from Dolores.
Exactly. She seemed a little uptight, and it's just like, I can't stand being a mom anymore. I can't stand being a wife anymore. My brother's a drug addict. I need to get out. So that's what I'm saying, that she is still alive.
All right, there you go. And that's your crackpot theory?
And I'm sticking to it, I guess.
I mean, yeah, we got another member of William's family revealed this season. I would not be surprised if we get the third one to fill it out, and that would create even a more interesting family dynamic too. If it's the wife that faked her own death to get away from her, sadistic husband, now back with her, and the daughter that she abandoned. Because
they're both obsessed with the park. They both don't want to leave the park, right?
Ooh, I'll one up your crackpot theory with even more crackpot theory.
Wait, hold on a second. You don't usually help, but I'll let you go this time.
It's her body, but it's for its consciousness in the body.
Yeah, if we do get an eventual thing coming from Emily where she just they have a heart-to-heart and then she says, the game's not, this is part of the game, William. Like, oh, God.
You know what I said, Jay, you wouldn't help the theory? Remember when I said that? I think I deserve a crackpot theory point.
They have a post-death coitus scene, and then before the consciousness kicks in, you thought you were moving forward in this relationship, but in actuality, the game has just begun. Oh, come on!
No! Your only way is forward and back and forward and back. Very fast motion.
Oh, man. All right, well, on that note, I think that's a good place to close out this episode.
And that's how you get post-pregnant. That's what it's all about.
And that little Emily is how host babies are born.
Birds and the bees. Birds
and the buzz.
Give us a call at 385-309-0311.
Yeah, call anytime.
And give us an email to westworldjjm@gmail.com. Once again, it's westworldjjm@gmail.com. Join our Facebook group at facebook.com/group/Jay and Jack Group. We have a lot of fun TV show discussions, including ones on Westworld after each episode. Also, Cobra Kai has been a popular one this past week. Check it out on YouTube if you haven't yet.
Excellent.
Among other things, Dancing with the Stars with Jack, Cindy, and Heather. We're episode 3 right now.
Heather's taking the season off.
Oh, so Heather Simpson.
She's got that pregnancy excuse going on. So,
so just Jack and Cindy. No, she just couldn't deal with your diva-ness, Jack.
It is true. I mean, you have to come in and kiss the ring finger and sit there before they sit down.
So that's Info Swing, of course, broadcast and Ramblecast. I think this week, Jack, you guys have a live show for the patrons?
We are going to be live tomorrow. If you're a patron, anyone can join us from $1 to $1 million if you're a patron. From 9 p.m. tomorrow night Eastern Time. Should be fun. And speaking of patrons, I want to thank the people that make this show possible. Our patrons over at patreon.com/Jay and Jack. We want to especially thank Tack from Tokyo, Eckhart Richter, Molly the Millennial, Ed the Letter Carrier, and Maggie the Magnificent. Thank you all for your patronage. And to all of our patrons, you can find a full list over at jayandjack.com. You can see a big button that says Become a Patron. Click on it today to become a patron. All of our shows are listener-supported, and whatever you can contribute helps out all of us. If you use Amazon, use the link Amazon or jayandjack.com/Amazon for all of your Amazon shopping needs. And Mike, you are a prolific podcaster. I listened to your SNL Funhouse last week. I was a little disappointed on your co-host's thoughts on the Donald Glover episode because I thought it was like the most amazing episode ever. But still, really fun show.
Yeah, that's the fun of it. One of the reasons why I brought Mario Lanza on there is because even though we're both SNL diehards, he comes from a different generation with a different set of opinions. So it's always interesting to sort of hear our disparity. We haven't recorded our thoughts on the Amy Schumer episode yet, but from what he's telegraphed to me, he actually enjoyed the episode more than he thought he would. So we might actually be on the same page this week.
Nice. Very nice.
I haven't watched it, but there's a clip of, was it mothers or having... It's mother giving birth or something like that.
Yeah. There's an Amy Schumer skit about the day you were born. Yeah,
day you were born. That's what it is. It's hilarious.
Yes,
it's great.
I haven't seen it either, but look forward to seeing that. And you have Survivors kind of coming up to the season finale. You do a lot in regards to that.
I cannot believe that it's been. I mean, we've all been covering the season. I can't believe as we're nearing like the penultimate episode right now. But yeah, it should be a good time. I'll actually be getting together this weekend with your pal and mine, Rob Cesarnino, to do some probably silly, stupid, fun things around Survivor. So it should be a good time. But yeah, I'll be in LA next week after we record episode 5 to attend my first ever live taping in the finale. So
nice.
I can't believe it's all coming to an end. You know, May has I feel like it's just blown in, and now we're already halfway through the month. It's crazy how time flies like that. It feels like we're in our own little loops where our memories are slipping by.
Exactly. Time is a flat circle. Yes, and you can follow all of Mike's stuff on his Twitter at Mike Bloom Type. Right, I got that right? At Mike
Mike Bloom Type.
Damn it, a Mike Bloom Type.
So close.
It's the at, or I'm saying at. I think that's the A. Plus, it's late.
It's the A.
And Ford's consciousness is having sex with Bill.
That could throw you. That
throws you off. Throws you off your podcast.
It's just a bad image because you don't want to see either one of those two having sex. To say,
there's probably there's an audience out there for that. Maybe there's an audience for everything.
Really,
Rule 43 and all.
I'm just saying they're a bit old, but
there's I'm sure there's people out there that enjoy that. I'm not going to put down anybody's preferences. So that is that. We'll see you guys next week. Until then, hasta luego and goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.